Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Biker Sunday School. You know, about the most well-known verse in the Bible is John 3:16. Seems like everybody knows that. You know, where for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him should not perish but have everlasting life. But nobody ever says much about the couple of verses that's right after that. I'm gonna read them to you. John 3:17 says, "For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved." And then 18 says, "He who believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God." Now chew on that for a minute. Jesus didn't come to condemn us. He come to save us. Now all through the Bible, if you read about Jesus, it's all good. You know, everything he did was good. Here's an example of what I'm talking about, okay? Now once again, the religious people are trying to give him a hard time. You know, back then in the Old Testament, they got, you know, the Ten Commandments and all the laws that God gave Moses for him, and you know, nobody can keep them. You know, we're all sinners. We can't keep the commandments. You know, as hard as we try, we still screw up every time we turn around. And that's why Jesus came, because he knew that it was impossible for us to live holy lives. We're just sinful creatures. And he came to save us. He didn't come to condemn us. Well, anyway, the religious people, you know, they're trying to give Jesus a hard time for, you know, going against the old ways and telling people all you've got to do is believe. God loves you, and, you know, that's what's important, is you believe. It's not all the rules and regulations, it's just believe, you know. Well, anyway, in John 8, verse 2, "But early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and the Pharisees, and religious people, brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, 'Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery, in the very act.'" Now, to me, that sounds like somebody was a peeping Tom. Somebody was looking in the window. Anyway, they go on. "Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say?" This they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he didn't even hear them. So here these religious people are. They bring this woman to him. She's caught in the very act of adultery. She's probably half naked. They done yanked her out of the house and drug her down the street and brought her to him. And he's ignoring them. He stoops down and starts writing on the ground. So when they continued to ask him, he raised himself up and said to him, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first." And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Okay? Now, why do you suppose they didn't just start throwing stones at her? You know, he says, if you're without sin, go ahead and start throwing them. I think what he was doing was, what he was writing down there on the ground, he was probably writing down their sins. Because that would have been the only reason that they wouldn't have already started chunking stones. You know, but I'm thinking he's writing down there, well, Pete, you done this. Henry, you done that. Fred, you done this. You know, and they're looking at what he's writing on the ground, and they're looking at her and looking at each other, and they're thinking, holy smokes, you know. Could have been even some of them might have been messing with her themselves. Well, anyway, nobody threw any stones. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out, one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" And she said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Well, right there proves he isn't here to condemn us. He just wants us to straighten up. Well, folks, I know y'all got a big day ahead of you, and that's probably enough for you to chew on for a little while. So until next time, take care of each other. I love you, and so does Jesus.